Area and overworld themes. Oh boy. Okay. Star Reader, Timeless Berry, music. Play track. View commentary. I picked up the tile set I wanted to use for the final tier of Arietta's Uncommon Time very early into the dungeon development, and I believe that I first started perusing Timeless Berries around the same time. A lot of this composer's music is very sparkly and fairy-ish, and especially the section where the melody line is muffled and the bell section is given more prominence fits the aesthetic very naturally. Atelier Ongaku no Tamago, also known as the creator's theme. Very cute and happy and a good source of motivation, instantly pegged as a great piece to use for the extras room. Weaponsys Workshop Ongaku no Tamago. A lucky find that meant I got to avoid using the same piece for the extras rooms and galleries. It's even more high energy than Atelier, which makes it a fun piece to use for those extra rooms. Yes, I agree. Journey Presence of Music. Another traditional-ish laid-back piece from the point when Uncommon Time is pretending to be a traditional RPG. Alone, Hagaku no Tamago. This one. Oh, I like this one. This is also used as an event BGM in a handful of scenes, so it feels even more strongly connected with movement too. The staccato bass and light touch of the melody for most of the song give it a sense of courage in the face of adversity. I agree. Oh, this one. Travel Path Hagall. Starring my Hagall bias for the final overworld piece. This is where you finally have your party back after all that hard work, so even before Uncommon Time 1, the triumph feeling is really great. I think we're supposed to be going in order upwards, so I'll go up now. Loop 36, Senses Circuit. I don't remember this one. Oh, it was in the music box. The loop itself is only about half a minute or so long, and it's very repetitive, but it's a very good half minute, so I used it. Sometimes I use it for writing background music, but since it is so short, I can't handle listening to it for as long as other pieces. Since the first tier of Arietta's Uncommon Time has random battles, hopefully the repetitiveness isn't too grating. Lynchpin, Sildra Company. I hear nothing. Oh. This piece was a Metronome Tower 2 background music candidate, but in the end I decided to save it for Uncommon Time 3 instead. Initially, I wanted to try using some kind of event background music in the scene between Alto and the rest of the party at the final gate, but nothing really felt right, and so I gave the scene a try with the area background music instead, and it worked much better than I hoped. Bridget, Armorcana. This was one of the Uncommon Time musics, I think. I first heard the MP3 version of this particular piece in a very famous visual novel long before I got started making my own games. So when I was flipping through the MIDIs I had downloaded from Armorcana back when they were still distributing the whole pack, I was really shocked. Like, I can use this for free? Can I really use this? Am I allowed? Because the visual novel is so well known, I was reluctant to use this piece at first, but I wound up using it as my background music while writing the relevant scenes, and it was just too perfect a fit. I had to use it. Probably because of where I first heard it, I associate this piece very strongly with revelations and cold truths. I don't know what visual novel it is, but at least you got to use it. I don't know. Waning Moon by Camellia. I don't remember this one. This is another piece that reminds me of some nostalgic RPGs. The original title is a pretty archaic term, and even the composer apparently had to Google it to get its correct pronunciation. The specific scenes in this area are pretty happy ones for the dungeon, but this background music helps to keep them properly foreboding. Star Rain, Sildra Company. The moody, depressive feel to this piece worked really well with the major flashbacks in this bit of Aubrey's uncommon time. The conversation between Arietta and Altair is shown on screen during Arietta's uncommon time too, and it's amazing how much the background music changes the whole mood. To the Far Side of Oblivion by Hagall. Background music that is only used during Ending 4. I really like narrative symmetry, so having Teagan go back through the frozen over forest of preludes to the dock was a lot of fun. She really hasn't learned her lesson in this ending at all, even though she's the only person other than the player who recognized this bad ending as a bad ending. From my perspective, it feels like she got put in time out. The dungeon itself is short, so despite that, there are no random encounters. You may not have gotten to hear the full piece. The whole thing is really beautiful, so please give it a listen here. Also, this is really obvious by now, but I have such a Hagall bias. Please send help. Can't listen to it all here, I'm sorry. Pastoral Symphony Movement 1. Oops, I did not press the button. Sorry. Hang on. There. Beethoven. I would have liked to use some of the latter movements of Pastoral Symphony 2, but I haven't been able to find separate versions. Too bad. The piece itself is pretty long, and because it will get interrupted by random battles, you will almost certainly not have gotten to hear it all in game, so listen to it here if you'd like. It's one of my favorite Beethoven pieces. I feel like there needs to be just a soundtrack for this game of all of the music you use. In the Moon's Music Box by Timeless Berry. That's really pretty. I mean, it's all really pretty, but I like chimes. The stargazing spot didn't have its own native background music at first, but the lag between the beginning of the scene and when the event background music starts up felt unnatural, so after some deliberation, I put this piece in after the fact. I like cute and ethereal music box pieces, which is why there's such a proliferation of them in Uncommon Time. Holy Realm of the Forest, Conte de Fées. Anacrusis is a big dungeon, so it would have felt kind of awkward if the different sections didn't have separate background music. Conte de Fées is a site that specializes in really cutesy music, so I'm impressed that they're so good at this kind of piece too. Oops. Dangerous Mountain Road, Conte de Fées. More Anacrusis. I really like this relaxed flute part to this piece. It lends a really relaxed and gentle mood. Despite this part of Anacrusis being all flying islands or something, the wind and water and sky still give it a relaxing air, I hope. Yeah, it kinda did. Evil Garden Presence of Music. Oh, yeah. The background music for The Path to Maggiore is the first new area background music in Movement 2. Even before Aubrey and Solène start to explain the history of Maggiore in depth, I wanted to make sure the player went in with a sense of foreboding. Uncommon Time has a few pieces that uses the harpsichord in really cute ways, but it's back to a tool for creepiness in this background music. Yeah. Clock Spinner, Ongaku no Tamago. Sorry, I'm just jamming to it, it's good. Since you never get to return to Metronome Tower 1 once you've cleared it, you never get to hear this background music again. Is it nostalgic? I hope so. I was happy that I actually got to find a string quartet piece for this dungeon. As for the dungeon itself, I'm sorry about the positive quality. I don't really like puzzles that much myself because I'm impatient, so I have a lot of trouble coming up with really good ones. That's okay. Rusted Ramparts by Silver Company. Ah. Given how often you're required to be in Bel Canto, this is a piece you probably heard a lot. Yeah. I love slice of life, and I wanted Bel Canto to feel like a properly large capital city, so I went all out in the map design. I'm proud of it. This is a good piece and I like it, so I hope you didn't get sick of it running around Bel Canto so much. Speaking of which, you have to run around Bel Canto manually at the very end of Movement 1 because I want you to really feel the weight of Alto going through the motions and to have a little time to process what you've just seen. I think I've developed a good sense of when to cut straight to the next scene and when to make the player go there on their own. Learning about how to effectively employ my intervals was a lot of fun. I thought this music was very telling of how the world itself was going to be continuing on, even if you yourself were stuck with a personal tragedy kind of thing. It's like there has to be moving on, even though, and it was such a disparity between what had just happened and what the music was like. It was really good. I enjoyed it. Echo by Camellia. This is yes. The background music for what's not so effectively known as The Forest That Never Ends by my tester team. Though the encounter rate is pretty high and the path is twisty, so you may not actually have heard the full piece loop around yet. The length of the dungeon, the weather, and the proximity to Magyar, though you don't know that on your first visit, makes Minuet Forest a good match for the lonely, forsaken feel of the music box and harp combination. Your first trip through Minuet Forest probably felt like it took forever, so it's a sign of growth when you go back with only 3 party members, and are able to get to the middle that much more quickly and easily. Even though you have to walk it, not quick jump to it. Jade Green Rain by Silver Company. Ah. According to the composer, the original name of this piece is pronounced Suiu. It's pretty. Stave is a small village and is really kind of a layover during both times you visit it. First, a place to get Aubrey to relax, and then for their event-heavy re-recruitment. So the gentle, tired, vaguely melancholic feel of this piece works very well with the atmosphere. You aren't required to go to the western part of town for the story, but it's a rest spot too. Yeah, the onsen. Traveling to the fields, H-Mix. The very first field background music in the game, though the Forest of Preludes is technically a dungeon. There's just something about having your first field piece be full of excitement and a sense of adventure. This is how a traditional fantasy RPG ought to be. Well, anyway, having this piece build up to help betray the player's expectations is important to the atmosphere. At the end of Movement 2, you have to go back through this very first dungeon in order to confront Teagan. When you did, I hope the sound of this piece reminded you of how your adventure started and made you feel just a little bit braver. It's very nostalgic, at least, at that point. I think this is... Presence of Music has a lot of pieces that have a gentle domestic feel, so I wanted to use one to bring out that solfège flavor. At the first town you visit, and the most temperate, it has a sense of being a little removed from the rest of the country. In fact, I was once told by one of the testers, nothing much happens here, and wasn't sure how to reply. Solfège is peaceful, it's just how it is. Oh, but if you go back at different points in the game, you can check on that engaged couple, and you can hear a little bit about what Teagan was doing here during Movement 2. Anyway, this piece itself is recommended for the comfortable and homey places. Look at the title. So where better to use it than the peaceful, friendly town where the villagers will teach you all about local culture and nag you to dress for the weather. I know that one of them got sick, the engaged couple. first real dungeon of the game. Its background music is a lot more dungeonish than the Forest of Preludes as a result. The title may say Maze, but I've been listening to it as a backing to Arpeggio Pass for so long that it's a mountain wasteland song in my head. Oh, it's called Maze of Tension. Sorry. By H-Mix. Academy Life by H-Mix. I love the arrangement of this piece. It fits with my mental concept of libretto so well. The steady rhythm gives a sense of hard, sensible work, and the low brass gives kind of a grouchy, stodgy feel. But there's still a sense of adventure in the piano and background pizzicato. You have to pass through libretto a lot during the story, but a lot is going on there, so I hope you enjoyed your visits. Remains Presence of Music. I get the feeling that Folio has a reputation for being an even more evil dungeon than Arpeggio. I'm slightly sorry. Folio has a lot of foreshadowing in it, from the obvious to the subtle, so this specific piece went with the content well. I'm still just imagining Bravura tidying up the place and making sure all the statues have a specific level of decay and, mood, atmosphere, for the background and stuff. Bells of a Strange Land by Hagel. I used a ton of music from Hagel since a lot of their stuff is to my tastes. Del Segno is another town with a lot happening in it. In addition to its being where you meet Mayrin, it's home to the luthiers. Did you investigate all the instruments on the shelves? Saki and Alto can give you trivia on them, so take a look if you're curious. I did. I had the instrument pixel art made for me at First Seed Material shortly before it went down by a user called Tutikai. They're so cute. They're really so cute. Thank you so much. Anyway, this piece is bright and cheerful, full of pride and curiosity. I hope you enjoyed listening while you explored. Promenade Census Circuit. This one's very just... This BGM is very cute. You've probably already noticed, but I've used both the MIDI and the MP3 version of it. You might have noticed this, but if you're running the game on Vista or higher, sometimes the lower parts don't render at the right instruments. It's cute both ways, so try to see if you can hear both versions. The Nomad's Sun is Setting, Sildra Company. Battle music. Sildra is another site I've used a lot of music from. This piece in particular reminds me of the soundtrack to one of my favorite childhood RPGs. With Mayrin in the party, this is part of the game where the difficulty level starts to even out for the first time. Part of that's having a full roster, and part of that is probably that I finally got to used to balancing the difficulty properly here. A lot happens in Pizzicato Trail in both Movement 1 and 2. There's the truth behind the world tuning and everything with Saki too. Maybe there's something you should check here in Movement 3 too? Needlessly mysterious hinting. Really? Miracle of the Stars by H-Mix, Polyphony background music. Another piece from H-Mix, this one's really cute. When I first started looking for background music, I ransacked everything my favorite sites had related to stars to use for Aubrey and Altair. Also, most of my references to other fiction are in libretto, but there are a handful of NPCs in Polyphony vaguely modeled after a book, series, and a game I like. Well, they're a little obscure, and their personalities and relationships are awfully different too. If you recognize the homage, I hope you enjoyed it. My apologies to the original creators as usual. I don't know. Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy. Tchaikovsky from the Nutcracker Suite. The volume is relatively soft, and the delicate harmony lines give a kind of ethereal feeling. Or maybe a furtive feeling, like you're sneaking around somewhere you shouldn't. Either interpretation is accurate anyway. Tuning, Feral Phoenix. This is the intro. It's a little embarrassing to introduce this as a proper background music for when it's just me fooling around on my cello for a few minutes, especially when it was only meant to be the title back at first. But then I heard a game maker I admire say it's traditional to use your title background music for late game dungeons or bosses, so I was told by one of my testers that this was originally a relaxing, meditative track to listen to, but after Music Box, Jewelry Box, even hearing it on the title screen became vaguely terrifying. I'm really flattered. I agree. Even though the title says tuning, I wound up playing scales and practicing vibrato on notes I like too. Gospel by Soldier Company. The MP3 version is the main theme of the world tuning and the story itself, so I used the MIDI version for the dungeons that shares the game's name. The MP3 version gets so much use over the course of the story that using it here might have been overkill. If you let the piece loop around more than twice, it will play without the melody line. It's neat sounding, so give it a try. Okay. In the Lakeside, Otonohapa. God, this one was so angelic sounding. I had this song picked out for the Spirits Village long before it was actually time to start working on the maps. I love the vocal part. There's a vocal part? Tenuta Springs is another place you wind up visiting with a lot of frequency in the later parts of the story, so I hope you didn't get too bored with the BGM. Oh, okay, that part. The sense of tenderness, sadness, and magic to this piece is excellent. I can't imagine having used a different one for this town. Silver Dream, Hagall. Even more Hagall. I love Hagall. This particular piece doesn't have much of a melody line and is trance-like and soft, which I think suits the hidden road to the spirit's town where the seasons don't change and yet snow still falls. Remembrance by Hagall. A weighty, sad, ominous piece for the forgotten town with an ugly history. I also use it as a scene background music in Music Box, Jewelry Box, where Alto has to confront similar cold truths. This piece gets even creepier when you investigate the catacombs for the witch's heir side quest. I love it. Harmonia is a pretty unequivocally a positive place for the main characters in the present, but no country has a really clean history. The darker themes that first get brought up in Magyar are important to the backbone and underpinning of the story, so I'm very happy that I was able to find such a good piece for expressing it. This kind of makes me want to go back around and just stand in one place and listen to all the music and stuff. Even in, fights and stuff like that. Waltz of the Flowers and Gaku no Tamago. Tchaikovsky again. Come to think of it, there are a lot of pieces from the Nutcracker Suite in this game. This part of Anacrusis is a forest like the first, but it's dark and glowy, so hopefully it has a different enough atmosphere. By the way, there's not really any real meaning to the hidden mini-boss, except that I felt weird about letting the player grave rob without any consequences. That's right, I did do that. On the other hand, it's interesting to wonder why there's a graveyard in Anacrusis to begin with, and why ghosts were able to form there at all. Listen. Regardless of grave robbing, if there's something different in a row of things that are the same, you're gonna want to touch it in an RPG, because that always means something's gonna happen. So even if, to be fair, I'm very chaotic neutral, so if it benefits me, then I'm gonna do it. So grave robbing was going to happen either way. But, if I had known it was grave robbing, I probably would have been a little more cautious about it, and, been oh, maybe there's something that's going to happen here. But no. Anyway. I didn't expect there to be things in it. I'm sorry. Anyways, Red Leaves in the Faraway Sky by Sildra Company. Metronome Tower Take 2. I'm much happier with the puzzles in this dungeon than in the fake last dungeon version. Sildra has so many good pieces that I feel spoiled to be able to pick and choose from them, honestly. I hope that this particular piece is appropriately grave and gallant for the real last dungeon in the game. Excuse me. Tree of Memories, Hagall. This background music is only used in out-of-the-way hidden areas. It wasn't intentional that both have to do with Selene, but it's funny. A handful of my testers were very suspicious of Saki until being able to see the first hand where he got the first violin part of the grand score. As for the graveyard, I went a little overboard with the fancy trees, I will admit, but I really enjoyed making it as beautiful as possible. If you go back to Maggior and the graveyard after completing the side quests, the bouquets that Alto and the others left will still be there. Endless Hallway by Sildra Company. There we go. A sparkly, spacious piece used for both Uncommon Time 2 and the last tier of Cat's Cradle. It's a character motif. I have it set to the battle background music in Cat's Cradle too. I think this piece goes very well with the night sky parallax and translucent tiles, but I worry that I only think so because I've seen this piece used in similar dungeons in other games. I think it goes well. Winter Sky, Amor Kana. The ethereal tracks go very well with the Uncommon Times. For the most part, I prefer the MP3 version of Amor Kana's music, but you need a Japanese street address to sign up for Muzi to get those. Anyway, music boxes and MIDIs have a good affinity, and it means that the ornate and twinkly parts of the music are preserved. Yay! The musical direction in Aubrey's Uncommon Time was a lot of fun, and I decided from the start to use different tracks for each tier to make it feel even more obviously different from Alto's. This piece worked pretty well with both of the flashbacks in the tier despite the big difference in tone. Chacon in F, famous classical music sound library. A Pachelbel piece. Speaking as a cellist, I don't have a very good feeling for Pachelbel. I'm always going to hold canon in D against the guy. Yeah, if you ever want to listen to something funny, look up Pachelbel's canon in D rant or something like that, and there's a guy who will tell you all about it. But at least the alto and bass parts of Chacon are more interesting. Glazed over stair goes here. The fifth tier of the Grand Pause doesn't have any random battles, so you're unable to listen to this piece uninterrupted. It's long and nice to listen to, so this is a good thing. Blue Forest, C. Knock. Knock? I found this piece while flailing about aimlessly for a good wintry song and was absolutely blown away. Having a delicate and beautiful background music like this available for one of the most sensitive bits of the story definitely made a huge difference. This is the third time I've said this about something in this room, but it reminds me in a good way of games I played as a kid. Well, that's good, though, because if it reminds you of games you played when you were a kid, then it'll remind other people as well, and you'll get that nostalgia feeling and be more attached to the game itself. Dancing Cityscape by Ficusel. Another really cute waltz piece. I initially used this as an event background music in Tier 3 before I was able to purchase the shareware songs I really wanted to use there, but I love Ficusel's freeware music too, so I decided to use it for the Wintertown. The whole Tier 4 sequence was very difficult to write because of how it skates between serious and comedic, but the finished version manages the mood shifts a lot better than I was afraid it would. Crepuscule, Soleil Musique. super stylish and in waltz time. I like how the castanets in the background and how the slides between notes are rendered. This piece puts me more in mind of Sundown than anything else, but that made it a reasonable match for the autumn segment of Ariada's and Common Time. Legend of the Mistletoe, the forest darkens Ramine. I was very lucky to stumble upon some new free music websites just before starting work on Ariada's Uncommon Time. Using all new background music for pretty much the whole dungeon immediately differentiates the mood from the rest of the game. This piece itself is pretty much my interests, and the playfulness and sense of energy made it a good background for Ariada and Altair's first date, like ancestor, like descendant, apparently. Okay.